You're listening to Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, your go-to gal for all things money. As the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind the Sassy Wealth Coach, I'm here to take you on a thrilling ride from the financial chaos to sassy and sexy money. Welcome back, my sassy friend, to another episode of Cash and Sass. I am Lisa Marie. I am the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind the Sassy Wealth Coach, and of course, this podcast. And today with me, I have Malumir. Did I say that right? Is a seasoned leader with 2 decades of experience in strategic and operational expertise and a published author in public sector innovation. She's also a small business owner in the spiritual industry, certified master practitioner in neuro-linguistic techniques, and a university adjunct professor teaching master level leadership and career skill courses. And of course, I love the fact that you, as a small business, owner in the spiritual industry, because I talk about how one of the 5 wealth codes is spiritual. So that's how I saw that it was just connected, because I tell the listeners all the time that there's 5 codes to becoming a wealth queen, and that's spiritual, physical, mental, energetic, and financial. And so the fact that you're in that spiritual realm is just awesome. I want to dive into, of course, we're here to talk about money. I get excited. But the importance, you said that, it's so important to pay attention to your finances as a small business owner. And I am constantly saying this myself. And I want to talk about, like, how that came up for you, seeing that we needed to have a contingency plan, be familiar with our numbers, whether that's having a CFO, whether that's having a spreadsheet, know what in the world is going on with your money coming in and going out, so that you can have a plan in place when these things happen.
Yes. So prior to my having a small business, I'd worked for years um, in numbers, in finance, and economics, and I knew how important, and even from my own personal finance, I knew how important it was to have contingency, because sometimes life just happens, or an unexpected cost just happens, or suddenly prices are going through the roof unexpectedly. And so when I started my small business, initially I was a service-based business, and it was just a way of having a small business on the side. But then when I started to get into product design, specifically tarot cards, indie tarot cards, I realized that, there are so many factors at play when it comes to creating a physical product. And what if something unexpected happens? Uh, am I going to have to sink more of my own personal money, because I had put in so much of my own personal money to in the product development phase? And now, once we're getting to manufacture and we're getting to actually sending out product, you better make sure you have enough money to do it. I've seen people who haven't, and then they've had to take out personal loans. No, no, no. You need to have contingency. And so that is where that came from, and why I've always built in contingency, and it has saved me.
So when you talk about contingency, let's tell them what contingency is. See, like for me, when I help my clients build their money roadmap, contingency is making sure that we're saving for, you know, the, the instead of calling it emergency, we call it rainy day or life happen funds. We make it something other than emergency, right? Because some people, that's just a negative mindset word for them, right? But we have this plan, but we also save for the things that they're wanting, and we also make sure, like, money is put up in their yearly savings accounts for those yearly expenses, so it's not messing with their operating. A lot of my clients, I also recommend they get a line of credit, and most people are going, "Well, wait a minute, you recommend they go into debt?" No, I recommend they get a line of credit. You don't have to actually pay anything on the line of credit unless you pull from it. But a perfect example, contingencies, we had a line of credit for one of my clients. And when most people may not know it unless you're in the medical industry, but when the clearinghouse was taken hostage a few months ago, back at the beginning of the year. It's a clearinghouse of how medical claims are filed. And when they were taken hostage, all these medical doctors and therapists and pharmacies all of a sudden weren't getting paid. Their claims weren't being paid from the insurance companies because it was all halted because they needed to get the stuff back, right? And, she came to me, she says, "Okay, Lisa," she said, "I need to make sure I can still pay my people." So I was like, "All right, look, this is the reason why you have this line of credit. This is a contingency. This is the reason why you have it. We know the money's going to come. We just don't know when this is going to be resolved. So now we use the line of credit so that you're not having to struggle to pay your people." So that's what we're talking about. You have to be smart with it. I don't mean go get a line of credit, max it out, and buy willy nilly stuff. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is be smart with how you have the contingencies. And if that is an emergency credit card, great. It's put up for just emergencies. I have an emergency credit card, just saying. I have a personal emergency credit card, and that thing has saved me time and time again. Because if you have a vehicle breakdown and you don't have enough money in your savings account, or if you have fur babies like me and the fur babies get sick, right? If you've been to an emergency vet, has anyone been to an emergency vet to find out
Oh,
how much
yes.
it is before you walk out the door? I was like, "Oh my gosh, here, pay on the card." And then we figure it out afterwards, because the last thing you wanna figure out is how was it $600 or $700 or $1,000 is gonna come out of your everyday funds on paying those expenses. So, how do you put a contingency plan in place? Because one of the things I want my listeners to understand is there's more than one way to do it. There's no quote unquote right way. And y- regardless of how you do it, you need to be smart and strategic with it.
Yes. So I do this in a few ways, actually. Here's some examples. One was when I created my first tarot deck. I was crowdfunding. I was going to crowdfund on a crowdfunding platform. Now, when I was determining what the crowdfunding goal was going to be, I had a spreadsheet and I itemized everything, absolutely every cost. I didn't rush it, right? So don't rush it. Take your time. Make sure you're not forgetting about some administrative cost or some other logistical costs that you may not have thought of. Be really careful when you're making estimates. Itemize everything, and then once you've itemized everything, add on an additional, say, 10%. Right, and that's what
Oh,
I
I love
did.
it. You round up. I
Yes.
do. You round up. You add a cushion for something that you may not think of or remember, or something that may come up.
And it saved me. It did save me because there was, and I forget what it was exactly, but there was some unexpected cost that was required. And thankfully, I had enough cushion because I built in that cushion to my goal. So that's just one example. Another example is to make sure, and I don't know how people feel about insurance. I am someone who believes in insurance because you know what? Things happen. I was mentioning to you before the show started that I'm actually on medical leave from my primary job because a completely unexpected health issue came up. I've been very healthy. I've been active for years. I have excellent nutrition. I have excellent hydration. I have the perfect sleep hygiene. I have good work hour boundaries. I did everything right. I meditate. I have friends. I do things that fill my life with joy. And yet this still happened. And we're actually lucky that I'm sitting up today. Okay. Because this is a serious medical situation,
Mm.
completely came out of nowhere. And what if I hadn't had insurance? Would I still be housed? I'm not sure, right? What would my situation be? Now, when we're talking about business, it's just as important. And especially if you're a small business, if you're a solopreneur, oh my goodness, you better make sure you have insurance because what if something bad enough happens that you cannot work? I'm an extremely determined person, and yet I cannot make it through a day right now upright for at least 3 hours, for even 3 hours. I can't do it right now. And so if it can happen to me, a marathon runner, it can happen to anyone. So this is,
Happen to anybody,
you know,
right?
But there's also other kinds of insurance that are important. A friend of mine who is also a small business owner of a bricks and mortar shop, their shop several years ago caught fire. Make sure you have all of your product properly insured. I have my physical product insured because I mean, as much as I take good care of it and I make sure I'm storing everything safely and properly, what if something happens, right? And it's not about being negative, it's just recognizing that statistically things happen, life
Life
happens.
happens.
It happens, right?
Mhm.
And better to
I
be
say life happens,
prepared.
and sometimes I say life happens, and sometimes she's a bitch.
It can certainly feel that way. It can feel that way. And so just being prepared and being not sticking your head in the sand. And the thing is it doesn't even have to be negative. It just you're just making sure that if life does have to happen to occur in a way that isn't so awesome that you are
You're
prepared.
protected,
Yeah, that you're
right?
protected. You're actually just
Yeah.
protecting yourself. You're just looking out for future you in case something weird happens. And so those are some ways that I suggest making contingencies. Uh,
So when you say insurance, though, you're talking about more than just health insurance. I want to
yes,
make sure
I
we're
am
specific
talking
on
about
that
more than
for
health.
listeners because, like, most
Yes.
of us have health insurance, and they're like, "Oh, we have health insurance." You're talking about like long-term
Have
disability
long-term
type
disability
thing.
because honestly, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I mean, I sign up I make sure that I am always getting more coverage for things because, frankly, I've been through stuff in life, right? We're not even gonna touch a lot of it on the show, but I have been through things in life and this is how I know intimately that no matter how responsible and awesome you are, things can happen. And so have the health insurance, have the disability insurance because like I said, I went from being someone who runs marathons and cycles and hikes and snowshoes and, climbs mountains and walks and does all the things. And now, so have the disability insurance, but also have the depending on if you have a product or if you have property or whatever it is that you have, also have coverage for that. So I also have, property insurance for my physical inventory as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, when you're service-based, you wanna make sure that you have insurance that covers, like, your computers, um, and, your stuff, and you wanna make sure it's separate from your house. That is something I had to learn the hard
Yes.
way. Um, uh, Found out that there's a limited coverage on your computers and all. So, like, I work from home, so I I didn't think about it, and I learned the hard way, and now that I have insurance on my computers and my furniture equipment. I'm not a product based, so I don't have to have insurance on product based. But if you have a brick and mortar, or if you work from home and you have a shop and you have inventory, which is something that I may have in the future because I'm delving into a different type of business and my daughter will be involved and we're looking at making stuff because she's done a t-shirt press and stuff like that. And so we may do that. That's going to be inventory. Guess what? There needs to be insurance on those, the machine and insurance on those things. So if something happens, you're covered, just taken care of. And I think that's really important because, people are going to be like, "Oh, what does that have to do with money?" Everything. And
Everything.
here's why, because just like Malumir was saying, she's has a primary job, yes, and she's a business owner. If she wouldn't have had long-term disability insurance and all of a sudden she couldn't run her business, and I don't know about y'all, but I stand up and sit up and type all day, okay? I Fridays are my podcast recording day. I'm going to be doing 4 or 5. There's a We don't think about those things, and I'm like you, I'm gonna be 51 in July. I am the healthiest I've ever been. I work out 4 or 5 days a week. I'm also preparing to do a 16-mile hike in Mount Zion, and there are some things that I'm like, "Huh, I haven't thought about having that," and now I am. I'm like,
Yes.
"Okay." I'm immediately going in here going, "Okay, I'm protected here, here, and here, but am I protected here as far as making sure that I have a way to take care of me and my family if something was to happen?" And so, it may not, and if it does, you wanna make sure that you're taken care of. Um, it has everything to do with it because if something happens, it affects your livelihood, it affects you being able to pay. And that's also where the rainy day savings comes from. Yes, still put money up for that because it'll help you. And having that insurance will also come into place as well. So, it's really important. And another contingency can also be for service-based owners is having that what do we call it? Thank you. Passive income. Sorry, my brain had to kind of go. And passive income. But that's where it needs to be truly passive. And I think a lot of us forget that at first we can build it. So having multiple streams of income is important as well. And just being smart and you don't have to go and get the first long-term insurance or disability insurance or anything that's offered to you. I'm going to tell you now, do your homework, do your
Oh,
research
yes.
because there are some that are better than others and some aren't going to charge you an arm and a leg. It just depends. I wanna also dive into one of the things that you said that I love, okay, is, like, that most important aha moment for you is realizing that only making money based on your time is not wise. And so many of us entrepreneurs, when a lot of us, especially if we come from 8 to 5 jobs or 40-hour, 50-hour weeks, we don't wanna exchange time for money because we're tired of doing that, but we end up doing it anyways. And so I wanna discuss how was that an aha moment for you and discuss how it can prevent you from increasing your income and your revenue in your business.
Yeah. So I think the fact is I do so many things, right? When I'm well, I have my primary role, which is a leadership role, and I'm passionate about that. And then I also teach at a university as an adjunct professor. And then I also have this small business. That's a lot of things. Now, I'm someone who works very quickly. I have multiple neurodivergence. And so it does mean that the way that my neurons are firing means that I just work faster. That is just how I am. I can't change that,
It's who you are.
right?
It's who you
It's
are.
just a fact of life for me. However, just like with being athletics, that so I've only ever run up to marathon distance, but I know people who have run ultra marathons, and what they explained to me is that when you're running an ultra marathon, you're actually not running the whole time because the human body is not designed for that. Like if you try to run an ultra marathon, which I think is something like 100, it's more than 100 kilometers. I think it's 100 miles. It's something wild. Like the body will cease functioning. Like people will go into medical emergency. That it's not designed, our body's not designed to run that far. So what do? They run and then they walk and then they run and then they walk and then they run and they walk. So they're doing things in a sustainable way. How does this relate? This relates to the idea that when when we're being productive and we're working our, our let's say our salary job or whatever job, contract job, we are exchanging time for money unless there is some other kind of factor built in, like commission, for example. Um, but if you're paid for time alone, the only way to make more money is to put in more time. But we have limited time and we have limited energy. And the fact is that you get diminishing returns at some point, right? You can only work so far, again, like that ultra marathon runner, before you actually have to pause, before you actually have to stop.
Mhm.
And don't you want to be able to keep going because you want to be able to keep contributing, you want to keep creating, you want to keep making a difference in people's lives, you want to keep making money. And in order to do that, you have to be able to keep going. So you have to be sustainable whatever you're doing. If you're only trading time for money, and let's say you're only doing it with one source of income, again, what happens if suddenly the unthinkable happens and now you cannot trade time for money because your body isn't allowing you to? And no matter how much people want to think, "Oh, I could tough it out," your body your body will do what it will do. And so trading time for money, that is something that has really stuck with me. And the what was the other question? There was a follow-up question you asked to that, um, that I'm trying to recall.
How does it prevent how does it prevent us from increasing
Ah,
our income? And then I'm gonna have another follow-up question.
yes.
I
So
always do.
yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of how it prevents making more money, it's because then you can no longer scale up because there are only so
Mhm.
many hours in a day. And even if you work lots and lots of hours, at some point, again, that's actually going to negatively impact your well being. It's going to negatively impact your health. It's going to negatively impact how clearly you can think. And if you are a small business owner, you need to be able to do those things. You need to keep yourself well so
Mhm.
that you can keep going over the long term. You need to be able to think clearly so that you can, develop new strategies and pivot as you need to and keep investing that value in your business. So, that is certainly something that I would say it prevents you from being able to scale up. It also prevents you from being able to have those new aha moments. Because if all you're doing is grinding and grinding and grinding increasingly, when are you going to have those aha moments? You're not allowing any space for new creative ideas. You're not allowing space to think strategically. You're not allowing space to allow yourself to zoom out and pause, survey, and then zoom back in. It will
Right.
become an impediment.
Yeah, and another thing I'm gonna say is you're not allowing yourself the freedom that you wanted in the first place when you decide to become a small business owner. At least, I mean, that's the reason why I did it. So I didn't want to be chained down to clocking in and clocking out. I didn't want to be chained down to those things anymore. I did it for over 20 years. I was done with it. Um, and when I was let go, that was my opportunity to say, okay, what can this look like? What can I do differently? It's now or never, right? I could have very easily gone back and found another job and found another clock in, clock out type thing. But I was having migraines. I was miserable. I was unhealthy as unhealthy can get. Migraines, tension headaches, you name it. And the amount of medicine I was putting in my body was ridiculous and none of it was good. Um, I joke that I used to take Excedrin tension headache medicine. And, it's those bottles and it's Excedrin tension, it's coated. I used to take those like they were candy. I would take the max every single day and it didn't do anything. It just dulled it a little, but it was enough that I would get through the day. And the fact that I don't have, like, major issues from all that those years of taking that medicine and taking Imitrex is a miracle in itself. And my point with that is, though, that's an example of what was happening with me exchanging time for money in a job. It was literally slowly killing me. And when I said, "Okay, no more," I didn't know any better. I didn't know any different because honestly, that's all I'd done for, 20 something years, right? So I didn't know any better. I ended up doing it too. And one of the things that my trainer will tell you is that when I kept pushing myself with the training and doing it, even though I needed to rest, my body would make me rest. I would get sick. It would shut me down. And when it shut me down, excuse me, I'd be down for a week to 2 weeks. And then I'd be behind but if I'd have listened and done it for like 2 days, like you're talking about, that going and that pacing, I wouldn't have been shut down, and now I listen. Thank goodness, I'm so much smarter than I was a few years ago, and I listen, and now I'm even healthier because, perfect example, I am training for the 16-mile hike, and Wednesday, I was supposed to do, 3 miles on a treadmill with the backpack, and I am here to tell you that didn't happen. My body, all of a sudden I heard, "You need a massage." Because I'd been working out, whether it's treadmill, hiking, or training with my trainer 6 days a week for the last 3 weeks. It's like, you need a massage. So I scheduled a massage. And I was like, okay, I'll just do the treadmill later. I got that massage. It was the best thing ever. And I got done. I'm like, nope, today is a freebie. There is no treadmill. I didn't feel guilty. I just messaged my trainer and said, I got a massage and it is exactly what I needed and nothing else is happening. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She's like, some days are like that. And if that, because I could feel the tension from all the workout and the hiking I'd done. And so my body needed to be taken care of because if I would have kept pushing through, I'm here to tell you 9 out of 10 times I would be sick by next week and I'd be screwed on going, even doing the hike. So I think it's really, and that affects your money too. So what I want to know is how I want the listeners to understand the things that we can do where we're not exchanging time for money. Like just different examples
Yeah,
because something may work, something may click. Again, there's more than one way. And so giving a couple of examples I think would really help.
certainly. So, some examples are different kinds of work that you can do that you have a specialty in. And another thing that you can do is having an array of products that, even if they're digital or virtual, that don't like that you may have to put initial effort into, but that do not require your ongoing work to develop or
Mhm.
distribute. So, for example, um, the teaching that I do, technically you could consider that, well, it's kind of time for money, except it's not, because I am compensated on a per course basis, and both of those courses relate to my areas of specialty. And the rates that I get paid for that are quite different from how I am compensated for, say, my primary role. And so, for example, a lot of people get into consulting for this purpose because they can do consulting and they can choose which jobs they take, and they can set the terms for how much they are paid based on their
Mhm.
expertise and based on the business and so forth. In terms of products, yes, I have physical products. The physical products do, there's a lot of upfront effort. And of course, there's ongoing marketing and promotion. That's just a reality of any business. It doesn't matter what kind of business you have.
Mhm.
But there is
Mhm.
also the physical packaging and mailing, the actual distribution. And I do that myself at this time because at this time, it's still working for me to do that. At some point in the future, I may need to look into outsourcing that. But I also have digital products that I have put in the effort up front to develop, and that does take time and money to develop. But now they're digitally available. People can download them at 24/7. It doesn't matter where in the world they are, and I don't need to be involved with that anymore. Again, yes, I
Right.
still need to do marketing and promotion. Again, that's just a reality. But these are things that, they require the upfront investment. But now that's done.
Mhm.
And now it's really just about anything you need to do to get the word out and remind folks of the products.
Right, right. So, and that's one of the things I have is I have 2 well, I have 2 online courses, and we're in the process of putting more, and so it's right, is putting the initial effort in there, yes, and then having them out there evergreen for people that can go and buy them, and I do that so that they're at a lower cost, um to offer to people who may not be ready to work in like my group or one-on-one with me or do a deep dive with me because those are a little bit more higher of an investment. And so and again, having those courses and them being evergreen is just it's smart. I would have never thought about it until a couple of years ago, and that's why we started putting them together. And I'm the type of person that I'm not going to put just anything together. It needs to make sense and it needs to feel good. So it takes me a little bit longer. So I think that's just really important that we realize that when it comes to money and comes to wealth, there's more than one way um, to make sure that you're taken care of, that your money is taken care of, that you know what's going on with your money. And, Malumir said that, it's the insurance, it's making sure that you have these contingencies in place on, you can call them what if moments, you can call them life moments, you can call them whatever you want to. We have enough proof. 2020 should be a huge reminder that anything at any time can happen and it's out of our control. So having contingencies especially having a money roadmap plan in place, knowing what the hell is going on with your money is just so important, because that's how a lot of people were able. At first, they struggled because they didn't know, and then I don't know. I had a bunch of people come to me and say, "Okay, help me build this. I need to know how I can make it through 2020, how I can pivot, where I can pivot." And that's what we did. Is we literally built them a money roadmap, financial plan to get them to where they could see they could keep their business and they could pivot and they could make it, through whatever. Because at the time we weren't sure, right? And so, you're bringing up that great point, and I want my listeners to understand there's more than one way. And we're not trying to talk, negatively or say, "Oh, shit's going to happen." That's not what we're trying to do. What I want you to realize is there's more than one way of making sure you're taken care of, and there's small things that you can do. Long-term disability, look into it, see if it's reasonable, see if it's right for you. If it is, get it. And then, okay, can in order to determine you afford it, that's where knowing your numbers, knowing what's going on with your money, and having that plan in place so that you can um, allocate money for in those different things. And again, making sure it's aligned with your values and your desires and your wants. Malumir, I appreciate you being here on this show, on my show. I absolutely love that we got to talk about those different aspects. And I truly appreciate you. And, thank you for sharing your expertise and sharing your experience and talking a little bit about that, because that shares with the listeners that again, life happens. And okay, well, if it could happen to you like you're saying, or if it could happen to me or someone else, then it could happen to them. And just knowing, having different ways that they can make sure they're taking care of themselves, I think is really important. And again, spiritual is part of the wealth codes, and physical and mentally taking care of yourselves is also part of the wealth codes. So that's why this all has to do with money, and that's the reason why I made them the wealth codes is because it all encompasses together. So thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate you taking your time out of the day. And to my sassy listener, until next time, remember to stay sassy. Bye. Thanks for joining us this week on Cash and Sass. Check us out on social media and on our website at www.thesassywealthcoach.com, where you can download my free Money Story Start Guide. The website again is www.thesassywealthcoach.com. And as always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. And remember, yes, it is possible to have sassy and sexy money. See you next week.